To this webinar event on European technology for a greener and carbon-free Hong Kong, with a special focus on electric vehicles and waste management. This webinar is organized by the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Offices in Brussels and Berlin, respectively. It is also our pleasure to have 10 supporting trade organizations from various European countries for today's webinar. I am Alexander de Berg, Chairman of the Belgium-Hong Kong Society, and it is my pleasure to act as a moderator for today's event. We will have 3 speakers for this webinar, and joining us are Mr. Wong Kam-sing, Secretary for the Environment of the Hong Kong SAR Government, Mr. Yvan Christiaans, General Manager of Keppel Segers Belgium, and Dr. Axel Schweitzer, Chief Executive Officer of Alba Group. The first speaker is Dr. Axel Schweitzer, and I'm now passing the floor to him. Dr. Schweitzer, please.
Thanks, dear Alexander, dear Secretary K.S. Wong, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First, it's a big honor and joy to be part of your webinar today, and thanks for having me. May I start with the introduction of my company, the Alba Group, and let's go to the next slide already, to present the opportunities for resource management in Hong Kong. And first, so you know who is Alba, what is Alba. We're actually part of the worldwide top 10 companies in the field of waste management. We are family owned. We have a history of more than 50 years. We have a great team, and we've started in Europe, especially or particularly in Berlin. And our DNA is recycling. That's why humbly we call ourselves the recycling company. And I always like to say that because if you look at all the website of the big companies, they all look a little bit the same or similar. Actually, one of the big criteria where we think we are a little bit different is because of our recycling DNA. Why do we think so? Because especially my parents already started as the pioneers at the beginning of the 70s in Berlin, the professional recycling, and later what they start is the separate collection, became the dual system, the green dot system, and went viral all over the world. I'm actually located in Hong Kong, and this since about now almost 8 years. Why? You could ask, did I do so? Because we are happily selecting from our huge variety of our recycling portfolio the most suitable activities for Asia, and I will come later to mention a few of them and localize them to the Asian market. And asking or being asked about, okay, what is our dream or vision, etc. I like to talk about my son. I have 3 children, and when we moved to Hong Kong, the oldest one was about 5 years old, and he remembered from Berlin about 7 recycling bins in front of our complex, and he asked me, coming to Hong Kong, Papa, where are the recycling bins in Hong Kong? And I said, maybe there are not so many. And then he said, at least at this time, the famous word what had a big impact on me. He said, Papa, you need to change that. And that is something what I really like, because as adults we seem to think in difficulties, challenges, and I like the idea that kids just think, okay, if you can think it, then let's try and do it. Obviously, we are not successful with everything we do, but at least we are trying. And this brings us to probably also what Secretary KS is referring later to, and we are very happy that Hong Kong just recently published the base blueprint for Hong Kong to set out the direction for 2035, and Dear KS, I would like to congratulate you for this blueprint, for what especially you and your team have done. I think that's going exactly in the right direction in the fields of enhancing collection and separation. I will talk about it as later as well. Resource circulation and promoting innovative technologies to enhance efficiency. And last but not least, obviously also contributing to the goal of Hong Kong to become carbon neutral by already 2050. So they are quite ambitious goals, and we are really happy that government set out these directions, and as the industry that we are helping to implement, and ideally also supported by the society, because that's always very important in our field. Let me focus on, as I said, especially starting with the collection. We've established smart city logistics. What does it mean? It means, for example, starting with electric trucks, with solar panels, smart route planning. We have smart bins with sensors. So these, the bins actually give the signal when they need to be emptied instead of just always driving the same route. We have smart, and I also think pretty cool, AI solutions using also the optic sensors by analyzing the waste, so we can improve again the recycling. And we are happy that already we are running these smart city logistics, for example, obviously in Europe, but we see Asia is even moving faster than Europe in this field. And besides Europe, it's obviously in Singapore and heavily also already introduced in China. So hopefully this is something Hong Kong is moving as well, especially also in the view of the Greater Bay Area. After the collection, waste needs to be separated, and because using individual bins, not everyone is doing it exactly. I would say even in the German way, and to be honest, between you, it's like we are a small group, so I can be very honest. Even in Germany, they're not so perfect, so it needs to be separated. And these separation plants, they have a lot of technology. This is something we've developed over the last 50 years, and where we are humbly calling ourselves the worldwide leader in this technology. And these plants can be tailor-made, smaller or bigger, depending on the actual land possibilities. And we all know, obviously, Hong Kong has scarce land, so there can be also smaller ones. This brings me, after the separation, to the resource circulation. So the goal always is that the material needs to be brought back into the material loop. This is, by the way, one of our principles of our company, what my father really started more than 50 years ago. So recycling always starts with bringing back the material into the material loop, and also lives on examples. So, for example, in Hong Kong, we are happy together with partners as a private initiative to build the first of its kind plastic recycling plant. Was actually happening right now with the assembling of the plant in Tuen Mun, for the ones knowing Hong Kong a little bit better, with the support of the government in the Eco Park. So we are very happy that we can help, hopefully setting the example, and also hoping that government is, as done in the example I show you after this one, introducing the producer responsibility scheme, because this is the secret and the key why Germany became the worldwide leader in recycling, because of producer responsibility scheme. What does it mean? This means, like, if producers bringing, for example, their products into the markets or the packaging, then they are also responsible for the recycling, and that's a really important step. And the first of its kind of the producer responsibility scheme is the electric or electronic waste recycling, where we have been very happy and proud that Hong Kong government, after the worldwide tender, that selected our group together with New World to implement the first of its kind and the so far biggest electronic waste recycling plant in Asia, and not only to design, build and operate the plant, but also to set up a whole new collection system for Hong Kong, what obviously has a lot of, it's a beautiful city as we know, but it's also quite different from obviously the European setups, and I'm not only talking about the rice cookers, but obviously also about the different compounds and you know, collecting washing machines from, I don't know, 45th floor is a little bit different than to the small houses in Europe. So no fear, I won't now talk you through the whole layout. So just to give you an overview, obviously it's, at least I think it's quite impressive. As I said, it's initiated by the government, and I think this is a great example what Hong Kong, or where Hong Kong has shown that introducing producer responsibility system does have a big effect and is boosting recycling in Hong Kong, and also acts as or stands as a raw model for other solutions in Asia. And for example, only like a few weeks ago, we had been selected by the city or country of Singapore to implement the producer responsibility system for Singapore and Singapore had a lot of exchange to Hong Kong. Why is that so important? Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, it's about bringing recyclables back into the market. And over the last more than 4 years operating this plant, we have been able to bring 55,000 tons of recyclables back into the loop. We are really proud of that, because that material would have been lost or, you know, dumped or you know, whatever. And this means that we have a recycling rate of more than 87%. What we think is already pretty good, but at the same time working on still, we want, or our own goal is to increase this of about more than 90%. And so we are working on this, and as you can see, this includes the copper, the aluminium, the iron, and last but not least, the plastics. So I'm very happy to share this experience with you, and also happy to answer your questions now or later. Alexander, that's up to you.
Thank you, Dr. Schweitzer, for your presentation, and congratulations with the achievements made so far. They are very impressive. We will keep the questions for after the presentations. So please allow me now to give the floor to Ivan Christiaans, General Manager of Keppel Segers Belgium. Mr. Christiaans, the floor is yours.
Yes, dear Alexander, dear Secretary K.S. Wong, and dear organizers of this event, thank you. I have the pleasure to introduce you to Hong Kong's first integrated waste management system, a facility which is currently under construction. The technology for this plant will be provided by our company, Keppel Segers. Next slide. Keppel Segers is the environmental division of Keppel Infrastructure. We are part of Keppel Corporation, which is a company listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange. We are a global leader in environmental systems and urban solutions. Our company, Keppel Segers Belgium, is located near Brussels in an old beer brewery. We are highly specialized in the development of waste energy technology. Next slide. Hong Kong has a population of 7.3 million people. It is one of the most densely populated cities in the world, and there's limited land available. In 2019, Hong Kong was producing 5.7 million tons of waste per year. About 80% of this, 3.9 million tons, has been sent to one of the 3 existing landfills. Next slide. So the objective of the Hong Kong's first integrated waste management facility is to substantially reduce the amount of waste going to the landfill, and also to increase and stimulate the recovery of useful resources. The integrated waste management facilities consist of two facilities. The first one is a waste-to-energy plant with a capacity of 3,000 tons per day. The second is a mechanical sorting and resources recovery facility of 200 tons per day for demonstration purpose. Altogether, the two facilities will be able to treat more than 1 million tons of waste per year. Next slide. So, what is very special about this project is that it will be built on a place that doesn't exist yet. It is to be built on an artificial island of 16 hectares, and the reclamation of this land is also part of the contract awarded to us. The plant is located on the island Shuk Wu Chau in the southwest of Hong Kong. Next slide. Once ready, this project it will be working around the clock, as around-the-clock operations. The waste will be shipped from the main parts from the main waste transfer stations in Hong Kong to the artificial island by marine vessels. Every day there will be a delivery of 210 watertight containers. The artificial island has its own harbor with 4 jetty cranes who will unload the watertight waste containers. So, what are the key components of the waste-to-energy facility? Because waste has to be treated, will be treated 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and the waste delivery is only during the days, there will be a large waste bunker for sufficient storage of the waste. The heart of the plant is the great incinerator, where combustion is taking place at a high temperature, up to 1000 degrees. During the combustion, there is a release of energy, and this energy will be transferred into steam in a high steam pressure boiler. The steam then is sent to the turbine for production of electricity. The waste contains some contaminants, and all the contaminants will be removed in a very advanced flue gas cleaning system. This flue gas cleaning system complies with the very stringent standards of the EU and also with the Hong Kong standards. In some parts, like nitrogen oxide, the Hong Kong standards are even more strict than the European standards. The clean flue gases will then be emitted into the stack, which has a height of 150 meters. The incineration will result in a volume reduction of 90%, and the residue is bottom ashes. Ferrous metals will then be recovered from the bottom ashes. Next slide. So, what are some of the key environmental features of this integrated waste management facility? It will be producing 480 million kilowatt hours of electricity, which can be exported to the grid. This is the equivalent to about 1% of the electricity production in Hong Kong, and it is sufficient to power 100,000 households. This plant allows to avoid an estimated 440,000 tons per year of greenhouse gases, and it allows to recycle ferrous metals, plastics, glass, and other available materials. The project will have its own desalination plant so that it can be completely self-sufficient, and it also has its own wastewater treatment plant so that there will be a zero water discharge into the surrounding. From the architectural point of view, it has a very extensive greening so that it nicely blends in with the surroundings. Next slide. An important aspect of the plant also are the environmental education facilities. There will be an extensive visitor center to drive towards a greener Hong Kong. There will be guided tours for the visitors, and there will also be various services between the plant and between this phase 1 plant and Central and Chung Chau. So hopefully someday we will all have the chance to visit this plant. Next slide. Maybe a few details on the contract itself. The contract has been awarded to the joint venture of Keppel Seegers and Tsinghua joint venture. Tsinghua is part of China Harbor, which is one of the largest, which is the largest dredging company in the world. And of course, their scope is important as they're responsible for the land reclamation. The contract was awarded to us in November 2017, and it is expected to be completed in 2025. At the peak period, there will be 1,000 people working on the site, and same as for the electronics, also includes an operations and maintenance contract. We will be responsible to operate and maintain the plant for a period of 15 years. The total contract value is substantial. It's 31 billion Hong Kong dollar, or about 3.3 billion euro. Next slide. So I would like to conclude this slide this presentation by saying that this Hong Kong integrated waste management facility phase 1 is really an iconic project, and we are very proud to be part of this iconic project. We look forward to having your questions on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christians, for your presentation, and congratulations also with this project. And I also look forward in the future visiting the facilities and seeing with my own eyes what Keppel-Segers has achieved there. Before I give the floor to Secretary Wong, may I invite all participants to this webinar to send your questions through the chat box, and we will come to them after the last presentation, which is of Secretary Wong, Secretary for the Environment of the Hong Kong SAR government. Secretary Wong, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you everyone to join this seminar. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to our friends from Germany and Belgium to help Hong Kong to build waste to resources and waste to energy facilities that can help Hong Kong to catch up to reduce waste and also to improve renewable energy towards our carbon neutrality goal just announced earlier. So I will have a PowerPoint presentation to update you about what we are doing about climate actions, about electric vehicles, and also about waste management. The title today is Greener and Carbon Neutral Hong Kong. Last November, the Chief Executive in her policy address announced that Hong Kong would go towards carbon neutrality before 2050. In Asia, Hong Kong is one of the few leading cities with such pledge towards carbon neutrality. We'd like to be a leading green city in Asia. Certainly, we need the support from other places, including European unions, to make the best use of technologies to go towards carbon neutrality in Hong Kong. This picture shows our existing Climate Action Plan 2030 plus, setting our targets timelines to reduce carbon emissions and to make Hong Kong more climate adaptive and resilient. We'll update this plan in the third quarter of this year to meet our new target about carbon neutrality. And under the Climate Action Plan, there are three interrelated aspects. Because in Hong Kong, there are three major carbon emission sources. Firstly, the biggest is about electricity. Second, about 20% is related to transportation, in particular, vehicular emissions. Third is about waste reduction. We just set a number of zero targets. Firstly, as mentioned last November, we will go towards carbon neutrality or zero carbon emissions by or before 2050. And electricity emissions to go towards zero carbon sources will be one of the major challenges. Second is just announced very recently, is about the EV popularization roadmap. we announced that before 2050, Hong Kong will go towards zero vehicular emissions to tie in with the carbon neutrality goal. And third is that we announced that the waste blueprint is that we would like to go towards zero waste landfill by or around 2035. So these three zeros are important patches made by the Hong Kong government to make Hong Kong cleaner and greener. As said, the updated climate action plan would be announced a few months later. So today I would like not to talk much about that, but would like to show you this picture. It's showing that despite Hong Kong's limited land, we'd like to support more local and regional zero carbon electricity generation. From this picture, you can see that we are making use of the water bodies in Hong Kong, having the floating photovoltaic panel to capture the solar energy to generate electricity. This picture shows a pilot scheme done a few years ago and would expand it to a larger scale to generate more renewable energy. And I can share with you that this floating PV, including components from France, to be adopted in Hong Kong to support Hong Kong's decarbonization process. As said, we just announced the EV roadmap this week in Hong Kong. There are a few key milestones or targets. Overall, it's go towards zero vehicular emissions before 2050. And for the private cars, we set a 2035 target. Is that by that time, we ban the sales of conventional vehicles. And we go just towards pure electric vehicles or equivalent that are involving zero roadside emission. It's an aggressive yet practical pledge. Around the world, we are seeing that a similar pledge talking about 2030 to 2040. And we're talking about 2035 is one of the leading cities, again, in Asia with such vision. Certainly, there are many vehicles importing to Hong Kong from Europe and other places. And to make that practical and to be implemented in phases, we need more support from European companies to import relevant electric vehicles to Hong Kong to meet the different needs in Hong Kong, from private vehicles to commercial vehicles. And in the coming 5 years, we are going to test out different types of commercial and transport vehicles, including single-deck buses, double-decker buses, minibuses, taxi, lorries, and even motorcycles. So we see the business opportunities in the coming years and decades. In Hong Kong, in fact, the popularization of electric vehicle is, in fact, pretty encouraging in recent years. This picture shows the latest figure last year, that means 2020. 1 out of every 8 private cars newly registered in Hong Kong, one was electric vehicle. That means about 20.5%. It's one of the highest figure, again, among big cities in Asia, except a few mainland Chinese cities. As said, 2035 is the deadline to cease the new registration of conventional private cars in Hong Kong. That target will be subject to review, say, every 5 years in Hong Kong. So 2035 is probably the latest day. An early day may become possible if the technologies and support, etc., will become more viable. To support the popularization of EV, charging facilities are very important in Hong Kong. I would like to share with you 2 examples that we are doing in Hong Kong. One is that about 10 years ago, we have an incentive scheme is to ask all new developments to make their car park EV ready when they decide and build the projects. So it's a pretty good advanced thinking to make Hong Kong's new buildings to become EV ready. Second is to convert or upgrade the existing premises to become EV ready. We launched a 2 billion Hong Kong dollar scheme to subsidize the existing building to be upgraded, particularly for the domestic buildings, or its equivalent to euro more than 200 million. The response has been very encouraging. Our original estimate is that within 3 years, 60,000 car parks to be upgraded. But the response is that within about 4 months, more than 60 car parking space in over 200 premises or estates have made their applications. So I think the outcome would be better than our original estimate. And within that stage, given the incentive for new buildings and also the new subsidy scheme for existing buildings, in combination, we estimate that in the coming few years, 1 out of 3 this kind of parking space in domestic buildings will become EV ready. That would be a very good support to make the popularization of EV in Hong Kong. I quickly turn to the waste blueprint that we announced last month. As said, the target is to reduce waste at source. Second is to promote circular economy so that we can have more resources circulation or circular flow of resources and recycling. Last but not least is to go towards zero waste landfill. From this cover of the blueprint, you can see a new recycling center in Hong Kong. And I would like to encourage our German friend, including his son, to visit one of these recycling stores in Hong Kong. Now there are more than 20 across the territory in Hong Kong. The design is simple, clean, and support a whole range of recyclables to be collected there. And you can see the number 6, because in Cantonese, 6 means green, means circular flow of resources. As said, waste reduction, resource circulation, zero landfill are the new target, a new vision under the waste blueprint for Hong Kong 2035. I'm not going to go into details of the blueprints, the full version, and also the leaflet available online. It tells people about the vision, the targets, what we've been doing in the last 8 years, including policies, producer responsibility schemes, and also hardwares, including the iPad that you heard about earlier, and also OPAR is on food waste recycling, and also YPAR on yak waste, and also TPAR built earlier to treat the sewage sludge into energy. And also would like to have new policies and hardwares in the forthcoming time so that we can meet the zero waste landfill vision. This picture shows the interiors of the recycling store that we just launched in the recent months. You can see that it's very tidy, clean, and also have facilities to collect more than 8 types of commonly found recyclables in Hong Kong. And there are also incentive schemes that if you're going to put recyclables at the recycling stores, that you can collect points, and in return you can get some rewards. This picture shows one of the waste to energy facilities in Hong Kong called TPAR. And in order to meet our new vision and new target, we need more of this kind of waste to energy facilities and also waste to resources facility in Hong Kong. And I trust the European friends and companies would be interested in joining Hong Kong in this journey towards zero waste landfill. And in the past, say, decade, we calculated our investment in relation to renewable energy, energy saving and green building, green mobility, and also waste management facilities, a total of about Hong Kong dollars 47 billion, or equivalent to euro 5 billion invested in this kind of green, low carbon facilities. And it indicates that in the coming time, when we are setting even more aggressive targets and visions, the investment would be comparable or even more than that. And in our recent budget announcement, we have increased our green bond initiative so that we can see that we would have financial support to make Hong Kong cleaner and greener. So welcome to Hong Kong to visit the carbon neutral Hong Kong, and let's join hands to go through the carbon neutrality journey in Hong Kong, in Greater Bay Area, Asia, to make the Earth better. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Secretary Wong. In order to create the future, you need to start with a vision. And thank you for sharing your vision with us. I am happy to see that the vision has already put into practice. So it is already starting to roll out with your waste blueprint for 2035. And also very impressed that already 1 out of 8 vehicles in Hong Kong are electrically driven. So congratulations for those achievements. Okay, well, thank you very much. I suggest we now move over to the Q&A. We have many questions coming on the chat box. And I will start with a first question, which is from European companies, our European friends, to Secretary Wong. With all the initiatives that are being taken in Hong Kong, what are the new business opportunities that lie ready for European companies to tap into? And can you share some ideas and let the European businesses know how they can go about it in order to come and help the city to achieve its goals?
Okay, I think that is the purpose of this webinar today. And I think our environmental blueprints actually serve the purpose. It maps out the overall picture and also the targets and also the initiative, including facilities that we are planning and also in need in Hong Kong. So there are 4 broad areas. One is about decarbonization. Okay, we have our current climate action plan showing what we are doing and what we need in Hong Kong. And we are going to update our climate action plan very soon in the coming few months. That will tell you more. Second is about the clean air plan that I haven't mentioned. Probably in, again, a few months later, we'll update our clean air plan in Hong Kong. That would help our friends what we're going to do about improving the air quality in Hong Kong. That would involve, on one hand, phasing out the old conventional vehicles. For instance, we have been phasing out tens of thousands of old diesel commercial vehicles in the past few years and in the coming years. So European cleaner diesel commercial vehicles would be in need around that time. And the new clean air plan will tell you more. And not only cars, but also ships in Hong Kong. Because in Hong Kong, the biggest local emissions are no longer about cars, but from the marine emissions. So in Hong Kong, we are having different schemes to use new energy vessels. For instance, for the Victoria Harbour's ferries, where we have a plan to make a pilot scheme that there are few pure electric ferries traveling in Victoria Harbour. And for the longer journeys outlying islands, we're going for hybrid ferries. So I think European experience on the new energy ferries would be relevant to Hong Kong. Third is about the EV popularization. I think Hong Kong people love different brands of cars, and many of the brands are from Europe. In fact, I met some of the European motor companies represented in Hong Kong, and we are all talking about introducing more new energy vehicles, in particular electric vehicles, to Hong Kong. Certainly, not only about cars, but also the charging infrastructure will be important. In fact, the EV roadmap indicates that we would like to make Hong Kong's EV charging infrastructure to become marketized in the coming years. So that I think different companies with experience in providing EV charging networks would be of edge to help Hong Kong to make the EV charging facilities more accessible. Last but not least is about the waste blueprint. I think our friends from Germany and Belgium should have shared with our European friends about their local experience. And as indicated in the blueprint, in order to go towards zero waste landfill, we need more waste to energy and waste to resources facilities in Hong Kong to meet our goal. I think these four aspects need our friends' attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Wong. An interesting question to Dr. Schweitzer. It's actually a double question. First one, which is the most difficult material to recycle? And secondly, the recycled plastics, is it used locally or is it shipped to other countries as manufacturing materials?
Thanks for the question. I start with the second part. The goal is indeed to recycle locally, especially since we are supported by some of the big bottlers in Hong Kong, and they even started the initiative of Drink Without Waste. So definitely that's a goal. It depends a little bit on the time, how long it will take to build up these facilities in Hong Kong. So there will be in the meantime some period where we also need to export this clean recycled material. In terms of what is the most difficult ways to recycle, I would like to give it, and sorry for not answering it straight and directly, I would like to give it another thought. I think besides the recycling, we love to think about zero waste solutions. What does this mean? It's like by creating already products, we have in mind how we can reuse this product as a product, and only what can't be used as a product then should go into the recycling, etc. So by having more that, also from more well known under the name of the cradle to cradle, mean like the product should be again like the start of the cycle. I like to think about these solutions and hope to give you an idea.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Christians, a question that came concerning the waste management plant is, what do you do with the ashes? And what about the emissions? How is that controlled so that there's not much more pollution coming from burning the waste than anything else?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll start with the point about the pollution. So this plant has basically a whole chemical factory to clean the flue gases. There's different kinds of systems that will be used. For the sulfur and the chlorine that is available in flue gases, we use some lime and bicarbonate to neutralize these acids. For dioxin, to capture the dioxin, there will be an injection of active carbon. To reduce the nitrogen oxides, we have two systems. One is a little bit similar like your car. You have to add some AdBlue or something. So there's some ammonia injection to reduce the nitrogen. And on top of this, there's a separate catalytic filter to further reduce the nitrogen oxides. And then for the dust that is inside the system, we have two filtration systems, what they call backhouses, in a row to filter out. So that's a very advanced, complete system, allowing to go for very low emissions. As for the bottom ashes, the bottom ashes, it still represents about 10% in terms of volume. And now this plant will be taking out steel, ferrous metals. But in the meantime, there's also, let's say, developments in the market about how to, there are possibilities to go one step further, to take out non-ferro metals, even to take out gold, silver, and all kinds of precious metals inside. But that kind of, let's say, advanced or next step level of treatment may be something maybe for the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Christians. Secretary Wong, you said in your presentation that the majority of pollution in Hong Kong came from the production of electricity. And of course, with all these electric vehicles coming in to the city and your ambitious plan to grow that number, how will you manage to produce enough electricity in a clean way in order so that these vehicles can drive around and yet you not have more pollution into the city?
Okay, it's a good question. I think you're talking about the carbon footprint. In Hong Kong currently, electricity accounts for more than 2/3 of Hong Kong's carbon emissions, while transportation accounts for about 20%. Okay, the power generation could be, say, having more opportunity to go towards no or even zero carbon emissions with the use of the best technologies. So that would be one of the key strategy to firstly clean up the power supply. Currently in Hong Kong, I would like to say that in the past few years, coal accounts for a significant portion of power generation, more than 50% in the past years. But this year, we've been already reducing the coal portion to some 20%. And then we would probably phase down or even phase out all the coal portion in the coming decade. So the power generation will be much cleaner in terms of air quality and also in terms of carbon emissions. And we would devise a plan to go towards zero carbon emissions in order to meet our carbon neutrality goal in the coming 3 decades. So that would be a very good infrastructure to enable or to support the electrification of vehicles so that we can also have the zero vehicular emissions in the coming time. So it has to go together to clean up the power supply and also to go towards new energy vehicles so that we can enjoy cleaner air and also go towards carbon neutral Hong Kong.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Wong, are there any other incentives that the Hong Kong government has in order to promote electrical vehicles? For example, the tax, vehicle tax, as of course cars are very highly taxed in Hong Kong. Okay,
again, very good question. I think the last year's record, 1 EV out of every 8 new private vehicles indicates that our current tax incentive has been working reasonably good, right? Otherwise, it won't be having such a high ratio among all the cities in Asia. And in our recent budget, in fact, we have further increased the first registration taxation by certain percentage to make it up to about Hong Kong dollar 287.5 thousand. It's pretty good for the average priced private cars. It means 100% waive of the registration fee or tax. So it's pretty attractive for the people, because in order to make the popularization of EV, we would like to encourage more affordable model of EV to be available in Hong Kong with very encouraging taxation. And also, the annual licensing tax for electric vehicles is much better than that for conventional vehicles. So for the initial taxation and also for the recurring taxations, both are favoring the use of electric vehicles. And the electricity tariff in Hong Kong is relatively affordable. So if people are driving EV, the fuel cost for the EV is much better than driving a conventional petrol car. So it would be very attractive. And as said, our subsidy scheme to help the domestic estates to upgrade the existing car park, again, a very attractive subsidy scheme. Every parking space can enjoy up to 30,000 Hong Kong dollars upgrade fee if they need the trunking, the upgrade of the power supplies. So there are different means to give incentive for people to change to electric vehicle if they are going to replace their old one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Schweitzer, a question for you. Can you share with us some of the new technologies that your company has brought in to enable a more efficient waste separation and recycling? And maybe a pre-question. I understood you have been in Hong Kong for 8 years now. How easy or how difficult was it to set up your company and start rolling out your solutions for Hong Kong?
Yeah. No, thanks for the question, Alexander. Again, the second part, it's always, as the leader in recycling. So people trust, and government obviously trust that we understand a little bit about recycling. And obviously at that time, all our plants had been in Europe. So the challenge was a little bit to say, okay, we understand you know about recycling, but please show us the first plant in Asia. So it's a little bit like the chicken and egg. And so that's why we have been so happy and proud that Hong Kong government, after that worldwide tender, selected us and trusted us in implementing this electronic-based recycling plant in Hong Kong. And happily and proudly, we didn't fail, and we succeeded. And up to that, the complaint rate from people is below 0.000%. So people are normally pretty happy with our service, etc. So the challenge was always like having the first plant. And so, as I mentioned, electronic based in Hong Kong. Then we started, for example, the car recycling in Shanghai, the plastic recycling I've mentioned in Hong Kong, Japan, the bio-based recycling, the domestic waste recycling, etc. So there are, and last but not least, also hazardous waste recycling. So there are different parts, and in terms of technology, I think the biggest change, especially in the last few years, had been on one hand the optoelectronic development, the development in capacity of computers, and even the quantum technology, and last but not least also AI. So the solutions, I've also mentioned in my presentation, they're based on combination of these new technologies, and that's something what I think it's super interesting, thinking about recycling, combination with digitalization and artificial intelligence going hand in hand. So our view and vision is that especially in Asia, and we see that already in China happening, it's the development will be leapfrogging. So it's like and this is more also towards our European colleagues, that Europe needs to be on its toes, not to miss that development, what's actually happening here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Christians, a question came in concerning the fuel that you're using to make your plant work. Yeah, I think it's a relevant question because, of course, if you're trying to do something about the environment and you're using fuel which also emits CO2, where do you stand then? So can you elaborate on that?
So the waste is basically the fuel, and I think the question is to some extent how can this such a plant avoid greenhouse gas emissions?
Yes.
And I think this is the context is, first of all, the waste is now going to the landfill, and in the landfill the waste will biodegrade and there's a release of methane, and methane is very potent greenhouse gas. So by taking that away, you reduce methane emissions. Actually, it's less known, but in the whole world, for all the existing landfills, all the landfills are responsible for an estimated 8 to 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. So it's a substantial contributor. The second thing is that nowadays, for the production of electricity, still a lot of fossil fuel is being used, and of course there will be a phase out in the future, as Secretary Wong mentioned. But fossil fuels is emitting CO2. Whereas waste has some biogenic part, what they say, which is then considered as a renewable form of energy. And then the third way that it contributes to the reduction of methane, of greenhouse gases, is also that it allows for some recycling of materials like metals. And so you don't have to use fossil fuels or do the CO2 emission for producing new resources, because you are able to recover them from the plant. So in that way, it helps to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gases.
Okay, thank you. The recycling stores are a great idea, Secretary Wong. Can you tell us more about it, and how much waste do they collect, and then where does it go from there on?
The recycling stores have just been opened for a few months, so the data should be analyzed in the coming time. But the response has been really encouraging. People like it. Okay, people say even during the COVID-19 period, okay, they still create rubbish and also recyclables, right? And they can't go to visit abroad, so they would like to have some places to visit. They find the recycling stores very clean, attractive. So parents bring children to go there to learn about recycling. And also during the COVID-19 period, people buy more takeaway food, for instance, and there are more disposable plastics included in containing their food, right? And those disposables are mostly recyclable. So in our recycling stores, the initial data shows that more than half of the collected recyclables are plastics, different types of plastics. Okay, even though they are lightweighted, but in total, they are accounting for more than 50%. So it has been encouraging. In fact, this kind of recycling stores have been in Hong Kong for some years, but not in such a form. They were organized by different organizations, use different images and different reward scheme. This time, we have a new branding, unify all of them, and expand the coverage, and also provide more financial support to make it better, and also unify the reward scheme with the reward point collection card that can be applied across all recycling stores in Hong Kong. Not only about the stores, but they also provide mobile stations, because in Hong Kong, land is limited. So we can't always open a store at different districts. So we are having more than 100 mobile stations to serve this population in Hong Kong. So together, they are collecting much more recyclables than the earlier version, more than double, given the past experience in the last few months. And I think Hong Kong people will support it more in the coming time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Wong. I get many questions also about how to go to the Hong Kong market, and does the Hong Kong administration provide legal assistance for European companies taking part in green technology projects? I can only suggest that all interested companies and entrepreneurs register in their local trade associations, just like the Belgium Hong Kong Society, for example, and the Dutch Chamber, and that from there on, they will be put in touch with the right people in Hong Kong for them to start and develop their business. Yes, we are now running a bit over time, but maybe one last question, and it is concerning the taxis in Hong Kong. It's a very practical question for you, Mr. Secretary. Do you see that, or when do you see that all taxis will start running on electrical instead of diesel or gas?
Okay, I think we do wish to electrify all the taxi in Hong Kong. In the past time, the taxi used the diesel, but long time ago, we changed all of them to the LPG, the liquefied petrol gas, much cleaner, okay, but still with emissions and also carbon emissions. So the next step is to make them electric vehicles. But you know, in Hong Kong's taxi, they are probably the most challenging species on earth. They run almost 24 hours per day, okay, and running long distance, okay. And also many of them are owned by individual taxi drivers and not owned by several big companies. So the conversion would be challenging. But as said earlier, that we are going to test out different commercial vehicles in Hong Kong and would like to gain solid experience within a few years so that, say, by 2025, we can have a more solid plan to change all these or most of them, including taxi. So if there are nice ideas and relevant technologies and vehicles types that can help Hong Kong to change taxi to become EV, we would be very happy, okay? But bearing in mind that it's challenging. But we would roll out 2 pilot schemes to test e-taxi in Hong Kong in 2 districts so that we can gain better understanding about the challenges so that we can pave the way ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Wong. All right, this concludes our session, and I would like to thank our speakers of today, Secretary Wong of the Hong Kong SAR, Dr. Axel Schweitzer of Alba Group, and Mr. Ivan Christiaans of Keppel Segers in Belgium for their interesting presentations and giving us a very interesting insight in what they are doing and how this vision is being rolled out today as we speak to make Hong Kong a cleaner city and a nicer city to live on in the future. So congratulations to all of you for your achievements, and thank you to all our viewers, and thank you to the Hong Kong Trade Council and the Economic Trade Office in Brussels and Berlin for organizing this webinar. Thank you very much and see you next time. Goodbye.